Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am your host, James, and with me is Joe.
Howdy, folks.
And today we are going to be going out into the stars, into the Marvel Universe Cosmic, focusing on Adam Warlock. And for that, we needed a guest, and not just a guest, but a guide to the Marvel Cosmic Universe. So joining us today is our X-Men expert, but also our Marvel Cosmic expert, Arco Esposito is here with us.
Thank you very much. And once again, I hope to live up to all of that.
Okay.
James and Joe, guys, I hope you had very happy holidays.
Yes, we did.
Yes,
you did too.
Yeah, you too, Arco. Yes,
Thank you.
So, Arco, I just to go give a little background, you are the person who really, as I've said in the past, introduced me to Thanos back in the store. But I have to think, I think when we were working at the gym together, you also talked to me and even lent me the Warlock saga, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I believe that that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
You were my Adam Warlock / Marvel Cosmic expert because you got me into all things. And I wanted to do Adam Warlock for a bunch of reasons. One, because Guardians of the Galaxy is coming out sometime this year, I think in May, and he's a lead character. And I think, two, he's a jumping off point to talk about every other cosmic character. Not that we have to do that today, but he's interacted with Thanos. He's interacted with Captain Marvel. He's interacted with the Silver Surfer. He's interacted with the In-Betweener. All of these.
All the In-Between, yes.
So I figured this is a good place for us to start a Marvel Cosmic conversation, and all those characters could probably be their own podcast down the road. But
Right.
Argo, let's start off. Where should we begin with Adam Warlock?
I think you have to start at his first incarnation, which was back in 1966 in the pages of Fantastic Four, issues 66 and 67. He was introduced as a perfect being created by three mad scientists called the Enclave, and they wanted this perfect being to be under their rule so they can not only conquer the Earth but other planets in the universe. They knew that he was going to be something special. Turns out that they created a being that could not only harness cosmic energy but also use it and to basically do everything. Basically, they created a god. They didn't think it was going to be that powerful. Over the span of the two issues, basically, him, as he was known, decided that he didn't want to do the things that they told him to, and he realized that he didn't have to. And at the end of the two issues, he went off into space, and that was the last we saw of him until 5 years later, when a couple of great, talented, and Hall of Fame writers and artists known as Roy Thomas and Jim Starlin took a hold of him and reimagined him, gave him depth, gave him a backstory, and recalled him Adam Warlock. So going into the 70s, you had this cosmic being who was out in space, and they in turn used every single, well, let's put it this way. Jim Starlin was not one of those people who was afraid to say that he used mind-altering drugs, as a lot of people did, obviously in the 60s and 70s. I mean, the 70s itself, if you look at comic books, you're like, what were they tripping on? And Jim Starlin was one of those people that felt that he needed every little advantage to bring out whatever he was thinking onto the page. And whether it was the art or the writing, you see it in a book like Adam Warlock, where it was just so psychedelic. It was, well, not the character, not just the book, because he was in a lot of different series. He was a guest in a lot of different other comic books. He fought against the Hulk. He fought against the Silver Surfer. Again, fought against Thanos later on. But as far as a backstory, that's where he began. And then, as a lot of people know, he is going to be used in some way, we don't know yet, in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And I'm very excited to see it. However, I can't imagine that they will be using the entire backstory. They have to, for time purposes, they won't be able to do all that. But this is when he also, back in 1971, met somebody who will be in the Guardians of the Galaxy film called The High Evolutionary. I'm sure you guys know who that is.
Well, I actually just know of namesake. In fact, the only thing I really know about the High Evolutionary is the fact that I collected his Marvel card back in the
Okay,
80s. So if you or Joe can enlighten me about the High
Okay.
Evolutionary, and maybe our audience as well.
Sure. The High Evolutionary is a being whose origin story, like a lot of other people, has changed quite a bit over the years. I'll go with the classic one, where he was another sort of mad scientist trying to always do good and trying to push the envelope of what is morally right when it comes to science and testing. And he was able to push the evolution of animals to the point where they became intelligent. And he created animals that were, would be standing upright and be having conversations, talking to you about Shakespeare and all that stuff. And he would also have animals that would become terrible, beings, like the man thing, or excuse me, not the man thing, the man wolf, I believe his name was. Yeah, he fought Adam Warlock, and he was able to take in Adam Warlock in 1971 and give him a purpose. The purpose was to be the savior of New Earth, or Counter Earth. Excuse me, thank you. And Counter Earth was an Earth that the High Evolutionary himself had created, with a population and everything. Now I can't tell you if it was island for island, the same exact carbon copy of the Earth, but I will tell you that it was on the opposite side of the sun, so nobody knew that it was there. So it would be in a synchronous orbit at the same time as regular Earth, so nobody would know it would be there. And Adam Warlock was savior, the protector of that Earth, and for a while, Hulk was also living on that Earth for a time.
That's right.
Yes, and a lot of one of the things that I don't think you'll see in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie is that he was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but what Starlin did was turn him into a Messiah figure, and has said that Jesus Christ Superstar was a big I don't know. He was watching it at the time, and he said, "All right, well, this is what I'm going to do with this guy." And he created a being that was, for all intents and purposes, the Messiah. In everything but name alone was Jesus Christ on the pages, and how they got away with it is beyond me. So, especially with the Comic Code Authority being as stringent as it was back in the 60s and 70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's interesting about what Arco just said, which is incredible, how he just encapsulated all that. It's amazing. And you're right, they could never get that into one movie. His background would be a trilogy of movies, at least. I want to have one artist you might have left out, Arco, and that's Gil Kane. He did the artwork for Marvel Premiere 1 and 2 with Roy Thomas. And
okay.
Right, so I'm a big Gil Kane fan, I think. Yes. And if you look at Jim Starlin's artwork, you can see that it's very much influenced by Gil Kane. When Stalin took over the book, he had a dispute, I guess, with Roy Thomas on Captain Marvel, and he was kind of trying to transform Captain Marvel into a messianic character. He's tossed off of that book. He stays at Marvel, and they give him Adam Warlock, and he says basically, okay, I've got this character. I'm going to take some aspects of Captain Marvel and transfer them to Warlock, i.e., make him a messianic character. But what else can I do? Well, he made him a schizophrenic superhero. Paranoid schizophrenic, which fits into what you just said about all the taking drugs and mind-altering drugs, whatnot. So it just, and you're so right. When I've just been reading some of these stories from that period, how the hell they got away with this is beyond me. The Comics Code was pulling back the reins at that point, I would imagine.
I think they got away with it, and I was listening to a YouTube video earlier today, as a matter of fact, and I think they got away with it because I think the people at the Comics Code weren't looking too deep into things if it wasn't right there in front of them. So if they didn't actually have to read the words, they wouldn't, and I think they were too distracted by whatever images were on the page, which weren't flagrant, and they were very colorful, and they're very high in psychedelia. So I think that's how they got away with it. Basically, it was hidden. The message was hidden in the art.
Yeah, you had to read the story to get the message, and I can imagine those Comics Code people, those guys and girls, were just flipping through the page. Oh, there's so much blood on that book. All right, that doesn't pass. what's this stuff with? What's this Adam Warlock stuff? It's
Yeah.
nice looking art. Go ahead, no problem.
Exactly.
Well, Joe, if I could just interject just for a moment, just because you brought it up previously, his history. Like, how old is Jim Starlin doing this? Because previously, Jim Starlin, when you were talking about DC Silver Age, was like a really young guy writing stories. So how old is he when he's doing Adam Warlock at this point?
Well, no, I don't think I mentioned Jim Starlin. No, Starlin never worked for DC in the Silver Age. He worked for DC in the latter Bronze Age and more of the Walker? What comes after the Bronze Age? The Modern Age? The
Silver Age.
So, the Bronze Age. As we go into the 80s, what is that called? The Modern Age?
Yes, that's the Modern Age.
So that's when Starlin comes to DC and he starts writing Batman and whatnot.
Yes.
But I don't know. I'm not sure how old he was, but I would imagine he was in,
Well, he died when he was he was born in 1949. So he was 22. Wow. He was 22 years old when he took over the reins, 22, 23, very early 20s, when he took over the reins as a writer of all cosmic things Marvel.
Yeah.
That's pretty much, yeah.
22, like Jerry Conway and Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, Mike Friedrich, Barry Friedrich, Carrie Bates, Jim Shooter was even younger. So he was part of that. Bernie Wrightson, he was part of that incoming flux of fans that became professionals, and they brought a new aesthetic to the medium.
A revolution, really.
Yes.
As much, if not more. And I know that you're a big Kirby guy and Stan Lee guy. I know we all are, but they revolutionized because they brought something to the table. Joe, I remember you saying that Jack Kirby was the first person to actually draw something where you actually looked like he was moving. He actually drew movement, and yes, very kinetic. And I think that when they started to, I'm not going to say die down because they never really died down, but Marvel went to this new bullpen of younger writers and artists, and they took all the characters and all the stories in a totally different direction, which I think helped and did nothing but help grow Marvel.
Completely agree. I think they saved the industry because it was winding down by the late 60s and early 70s. The sales were starting to falter.
Yeah, look at the X-Men. The X-Men themselves were stopped at issue 56 in like 1970. At that time, the one of the which became the best-selling book in the late 70s and 80s was the X-Men. But at that time, they were selling it bi-monthly. And by issue 56 or in 50s, 60s, whatever, they stopped it. And they were just doing reruns for almost 9 years or 6 years before they came out with a new story. So these guys came along and took the industry, took all of Marvel where it needed to go and expand it into space. And nobody did that better than Jim Starlin.
I completely agree. I would like to go on record here saying I think Jim Starlin is the most underrated creative in the history of the medium. You always hear about Kirby and Lee and Thomas and Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, and rightfully so. But and later on Frank Miller and Alan Moore. But please let us not forget the contributions of Jim Starlin.
I agree.
I mean, he's responsible for most of where the MCU has went, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's responsible for the Infinity Saga that we love so much. Absolutely. They took so much from him. So yeah, I agree.
So getting back, I'd like to dive into history because I just want to put into context of where these creators are coming from and what they're going through. But to get us back to I guess Adam's timeline now. So he's the Messiah. He's this messianic character, Jesus Christ, superstar in space. So now that he gets his own, you said he appears in many guest appearances before he gets his own book, right? He
does. He gets his own book, which is called Warlock #1. But when I say guest appearance, he has a few throughout in Thor and Hulk and everything. But his main storyline is going on in Warlock. And to absolutely put a fine point on the messianic part of this all is that he actually has to sacrifice himself for the counter Earth to survive. And how does he do that? He is literally crucified on the pages. And he's crucified and he dies. Okay. And that solidifies what we know of him as a messianic character. Of course, not keeping a good character down. He doesn't stay dead very long. He is brought back little later on, by the way, through all this time, he is given the name of Adam. So when he came out of his cocoon from the Enclave in 1966, he was known as him. Then he became given the name Adam Warlock by the High Evolutionary. Excuse me, actually, he was named Adam by a couple of teenagers that befriended him.
Yeah,
And
right, yeah.
right. And the biggest thing that happened to him after that is that he encountered a organization, for lack of a better word, called the Universal Church of Truth. Okay, and this was the pinnacle of Starlin's Warlock storytelling, known now as the Magus Saga, Magus. And I mean, this will get a little confusing. I'll get into it, but what he did was he apparently Stalin. I did not know this until recently, but Stalin grew up in a strict Catholic household and went to parochial school. And he has said that he was dealing with his own feelings and emotions about religion, organized religion, and he ended up putting it, along with a lot of LSD, onto the pages that became Warlock. And the things that we love and that we see about this character was all what he was dealing with in his own problems, per se, with religion. So one of the things that he shows is that he shows, in his opinion. So I'm not bothering anybody's sensibilities here. I apologize. I'm not looking to create a political argument. Stalin believed that no one religion should have too much power over civilization. So that is what the Universal Church of Truth was all about. Not only did it have power over the civilization and on a particular world, they were taking over galaxies at a time. Anybody that did not follow them was killed. Adam Warlock got into many scrapes along the way until he finds out that the person running the whole thing, the Messiah behind their church, was named Magus, or Magus, however you want to say it. And he looked very familiar, except that he was purple and had the most luscious afro. Let me just chef kiss that you're ever going to see in the 70s. Okay, if anybody wants to look it up, just look up what he looked like back in the 70s.
Yeah, the Oscar Gamble fro.
Yeah. It was great.
People out there.
And lo and behold, Warlock finds out that not only is the Magus the most evil thing going around, second to maybe Thanos, or maybe even more evil, we find out, but he is the future self of Adam Warlock. And now Adam Warlock has to figure out how to stop himself from becoming this galactic despot.
He's actually not. When you dive deeper into the story and you see the conflict, the Magus is actually Warlock's evil future past self.
Yes, I know. Which is where we get a little
really head tripping, man.
Yeah,
obviously Stalin succeeded.
Yeah, absolutely. And he, the story goes that Warlock has to become insane for him to truly become the Magus. The Magus comes out thinking that he's not insane any longer and he has purpose and he has clarity, but we know that that's not the truth. Like Joe was saying, he's a future past self, which is insanity in itself. Try reading that story straight. I
just finished it this morning.
Oh, did you? Yeah, it was great. It was great. But let me tell you something. You have to reread a few of those sentences because it's a little out there. And listen. Obviously, we know that he defeats him. And how does he defeat him? Well, he goes into the past, literally wipes away a timeline, which looks like a line, a path, wipes it away, and the Magus disappears. And who helps him along the way? Thanos helps him. Characters that Jim Starlin has created that we've loved, and we will be seeing. We've seen already. Pip the Troll, Drax the Destroyer along the way, and then also Gamora. Gamora was not. Yeah, the Gamora MCU is far different than the one that we grew up with reading about in the stories of the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Watch, or earlier, the Magus saga back in the 70s.
Yeah, so I should just rewind just for a little bit. I know we've just covered so much ground, but the only thing, I guess, something that we have not brought up is yet, when did he get the Soul Stone?
Yeah, I apologize for skipping over that as I was talking about it. He was given the Soul Stone by the High Evolutionary. Don't ask me how he got it. I apologize that I've forgotten that little piece of knowledge. There was so much useful stuff in my head, it pushed it out. But he got that from the High Evolutionary. It was called the Soul. It was called the Soul Stone. And it was a Soul Gem. I apologize. It was called the Soul Gem, and there were other gems known to be around the universe like them, and they were all called Soul Gems. Okay, now that's important because that particular gem was written as it was a little bit of a had a sentient being to it. It could think on its own, and it was hungry. It was hungry for souls, and it gave Warlock even more power than he had on his own, but at a price. And Warlock didn't want to pay that price. He did not want to take the souls of people. Eventually, he would end up taking the souls of the fallen that he had to fight. And even then, he didn't want to do it too often. But sometimes the gem would like just go run amok on its own and would basically suck the souls out of people. It was definitely a vampire-like essence within that soul, within that stone gem. Excuse me. And Warlock was fighting that within himself the entire time. Later on, we find out there's actually, like in the MCU, another universe within that soul gem. And we see that because we see where some of those souls are going, and they live there and happy, they're peaceful and all that stuff. But that was one of the other things that he was fighting against.
Wow,
yeah, really, really incredible. It's they used terms back in the 70s: senses shattering, mind warping. On the cover, to describe a story that you're going to read inside. Well, all those terms actually they were overused, but not with this series.
Yes.
Not with this series. This series is everything they hyped it up to be. It was
absolutely
incredible stuff.
So, if I could expound a little bit on the James, if you don't mind, the Soul Stone gem. I keep on saying stone. The Soul Gems. So, not only did Warlock know the power of the gem, but Thanos also discovered that there was something to these gems that were being seen all around the universe. And he realized that if he put all 6 of them together and kind of harness the power through a big, large synthetic gem, he could bring about the changes in the universe that he wanted to bring about. Now, unlike Thanos' Josh Brolin MCU, which was amazing, he did not want to bring balance to the world. He wanted to the universe. He wanted to destroy the universe. He wanted to kill everything that he possibly could because he was in love with the embodiment of death.
Right.
And he wanted to only please. That was his only job in the world, is to, in his life, to kill as much as possible as a sacrifice to his love, death. One particular storyline, in fact, the last Adam Warlock storyline before his revival in the 90s, had him fighting, his ally Thanos, who helped him against the Magus, all of a sudden turned on him, killed Pip the Troll by taking, driving him crazy, and ended up killing him then. And his daughter Gamora, Thanos' daughter Gamora, killed her too. And Adam ended up taking their souls into the Soul Gem so they could stay with him because they were his only friends. And it turned out that Thanos was using the gem, wanted to use the gems to turn to destroy all the stars in the universe. So in one of the Avengers annuals, the Avengers teamed up with Adam Warlock, went out into space, fought him. Adam Warlock ended up dying. You actually saw the scene that was written in the Warlock series of a year or two earlier, where Captain America sees this and he can't believe he's seeing it. He sees the scene where Warlock goes to the future or the past and wipes away the timeline. He sees that, and they end up smashing. They end up. That's where Warlock dies. The second part of that particular series, it was a Marvel 2-in-1 annual, with Spider-Man of all people in it. this is when they go up against Thanos. The Avengers will go up against Thanos. They fast forward. They destroy the synthetic soul gem, and Adam Warlock comes out of the soul stone, a soul gem, the spirit anyway, and turns Thanos to stone and kills him. And that is the end of his first incarnation of Adam Warlock. Also, first incarnation of Thanos. And we would not see anything. We would not see them again until Ron Lim and Jim Starlin went back to the well, so to speak, in 1989, Silver Surfer, and issue 32, as a matter of fact, and started the story that would end up becoming the Infinity Gauntlet.
Is that the issue is that hollow foil die cut issue? With,
no. No, hollow foil. Oh my God. No, that one. Yeah, that was later on.
Well, I remember the chrome cover. I remember a cover where Thanos is like stone in the background and Surfer's in the foreground, flying in front of him. That's a different issue.
If I'm not mistaken, that's actually issue 50 of the Silver Surfer.
That's right. Yes, okay. I remember thinking about that this morning. Yeah. The two annuals Arco is referring to are Avengers Annual number 7 and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2. And I've got my Thanos, Warlock, Jim Starlin. Gallery edition in front of me, and I'm looking at that last panel, and there's Thanos, shot of his head. He's turned to stone,
and
a tear coming out of his eye, and weeping for a love unfulfilled.
Yes.
Black. What a story!
It was a great story, and let me tell you something. And one of the shameful things for me as a big Adam Warlock fan, and I read this story, obviously not in the 70s. I was only 3 years old when it came out. Sorry, Joe. But when I went back and I read those stories, they were very impactful, and I really enjoyed what they did with the character and what he meant to all the people around him. A few years later, Starlin, and I don't know the exact backstory about why Starlin had beef with Marvel, but I would imagine it's because he created something and they took it away from him, like they always do.
Yeah.
Right? So he ended up coming back and he did a graphic novel, which at the time was a new kind of thing that Marvel was putting out every year or so. They came out with the death of Captain Marvel, which was a huge book. It was like oversized book and everything. And you have a beloved character who ends up dying, when you have all the heroes come by his bedside and they, to pay their respects and everything. Even Thanos comes from the dead to take his old adversary into the afterlife with him with death. But meanwhile, Adam Warlock saved these people 1,000,000 times over, and nobody cares. I don't understand. This is what I'm saying. The guy gets nothing.
The death of Captain Marvel was literally the very first Marvel graphic novel.
It was the first. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was the first.
I'm holding it in my hands right now.
Yeah,
and it has Captain Marvel being cradled in the lap of death, a la Pietà.
Yeah,
and the Avengers and Spider-Man and Daredevil in the background, the X-Men. Yeah. And it's, he dies of cancer. He doesn't go out in a blaze of glory. He dies of natural causes. And and that's the thing about these stories, and probably why they spoke to you, Arco, as a young man, and why they spoke to me as a young man when they originally came out. They were character-driven at a time when that wasn't always the case, more so with Marvel and obviously with DC. They were character-driven stories, but there was a ton of action in them, too.
Yes.
And Starlin laying out, I mean, you look at some of the pages in that Avengers Annual and 2-in-1 Annual by Stalin. The action is over the top, in your face, beautiful. But yet, while all that's going on, there's this literally internal struggle going on in these characters that is that resonates so much with the reader. And that's why these stories
I agree. I agree. Absolutely.
So dare we now go into Adam Warlock's involvement in all things Infinity, Arco?
Well, yes, but unfortunately, I would have to say that's where I would have to stop, because I am not a fan of his third incarnation, which began in 2000 in the mid 2000s with the Annihilation wave, a storyline that took over a lot of the cosmic entities of Marvel. So in 1989, you had, and this is what's great. If you can imagine myself, I'm 15 years old, and I'm reading these Silver Surfers, and I know who the Silver Surfer is, and I got a lot of backstory on the Soul Gems. We've already seen them. Now issue 32 comes out, but I've already seen the Soul Gems a bunch of times. I know all about them. I know that they are powerful. I know that there are beings out there that are using them for powerful purposes. Hell, one of them's using them to grow a garden for all, the most beautiful garden in all the universe, right? Because he's got that kind of power. Issue 32 comes out in summer of 1989, I believe, or the fall, and there is an ominous tone to this. Like, something's happening in the background. The Silver Surfer has no idea what's happening. He just doesn't figure it out. And over the next 3 or 4 issues, I think it goes to issue 36. Who comes back? Somebody who I didn't know. I didn't even know who Thanos was, but Thanos comes back, is brought back, and Silver Surfer didn't know who he was. So he's fighting this person who has godlike powers, and you know how strong the Silver Surfer is. And I was blown away. I was blown away by the art, because Ron Lim had taken over about a year or two earlier, and I was blown away by the story, which had taken a totally different U-turn from what they were doing prior. And over those next 4 issues, they set up what Thanos would be doing. James, you remember when I first came on, what my first book was that I bought from mint condition back in 2000. It was the Infinity Saga.
Yes.
It was a two-part series, and I was able to find it in a one book, and I still have it to this day, and I love it, and I read it, like I said, probably 6-7 times a year. I know every single word. I know every panel and that thing. And but back in 1990, when it came out, even though I knew it was there, I couldn't find it. So it was the story of how Thanos now got all of the Infinity Gems together. And he decided, at the time, they were called Soul Stones, but he decided to change the names, and they became known as Infinity Gems, because they each had a power over a aspect of the universe, whether it be time, space, power, and all that stuff. So he was the first one to bring that out, and that storyline was amazing. How he either killed, cajoled, stole. Sorry, my computer's flipping out here. And he was able to put together, for the very first time, the Infinity Gauntlet. And in the series that followed that, which is called the Infinity Gauntlet, issue number 1, you start seeing things happen, including, all of a sudden, 3 people die in a fiery crash. They're 3 thieves, 1 short guy, 1 female, and one other gentleman. They all die, and they come back to life, and all of a sudden their bodies are starting to change into Adam Warlock, Gamora, and Pip the Troll. Yeah. To be quite honest with you, I don't know how that happens. I don't ever think I got the actual reason as to how their souls got out of the gems. It's possible that Thanos somehow ejected them, and they took over these charred husks of bodies and turned them into what they needed to. But now they have them back. He does not want to be here. Adam Warlock has always been somebody who does not want the mantle of leadership, of power. He wants to be left alone. He was perfectly happy to stay in the Soul Stone, Soul Gem, and the universe that was in there, and to stay there. He wanted nothing to do with anything. But he was brought back, and he realized he was the only person who could stop Thanos. Actually, we learned that the only person who really can stop Thanos is Thanos, because Thanos, deep down inside, realizes that he actually is not worthy of holding ultimate power, and this is why he loses all the time. The man has had Cosmic Cube in his hand. The man has had the stones in his hand more than once, all of them at the same time, and then couldn't do anything with them. And at the end of the Infinity Gauntlet, when they're towards the end of it, Warlock says, you can't, you don't deserve it, you can't handle it. And Thanos is like, You're right. You're right. You really don't. And then at the end of that story, you have the famous shot of the scarecrow in the field that Thanos is farming, and it's got his armor in it. We saw that in the MCU, so that was a famous thing.
Got that right, yeah.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's the only of the MCU Thanos thing was amazing. I feel like that's the one thing that Thanos was missing. That whole revelation that Thanos doesn't feel worthy of it. I understand they couldn't do it for the story, but that revelation is like one of the more poignant things of, I think, the Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, absolutely. And just think about that. Thanos without the gems, without the stones and the Infinity Gauntlet is an almighty power in the universe. I mean, he can do everything. He's way overpowered, basically. And think about that. The man doesn't need it, the Infinity Gauntlet. He goes for it, and he just realizes that he just does not have it within him to really be what he wants to be, and that's to have that power within his grasp. He just can't handle it. So I think that's a great revelation.
Yeah, I'm looking at the last page of Infinity Gauntlet issue 6, and there's Thanos chilling on his front porch, just sitting there, in his tunic and his boots. And that's the image we see in the movie, right? So it's wow, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it really works well. So this is what happens with Warlock. He gets the Infinity Gems. He gets the Infinity Gauntlet, which, by the way, isn't all that sexy as it is in the movies. This basically was just Thanos' sweaty glove that he wore for the last 20 years of comics, and he just puts the things on the back of the glove. That's all it was. Mm. So now Adam Warlock has it. It's ridiculously large on his hand. It looks ridiculous if you ever see a picture of it. And he has the power to reshape the universe to his will. He's basically now he is God in every sense of the word. He's not even Jesus Christ. He's just God. He is basically brought in front of the High Evolutionary, and I don't want to get crazy with anybody who doesn't know it, but the High Evolutionary is actually the most powerful being for the most part in the MCU. Anything he says goes. If he decides that he wants you to be blue, you're going to be blue. And he says that Adam Warlock can't have the Infinity Gauntlet, and he has to disperse the stones. So he does. He gives them to a bunch of people that ends up becoming the Infinity Watch. They're basically watching over these Infinity Gems, so nobody gets a hand of them. He keeps the Soul Stone. He gives one to Pip the Troll. He gives one to Moondragon, one to Gamora. He gives one to Drax, who at this point is mentally unstable, the child, and who ends up swallowing it. And then he gives one to an unnamed, unseen person. Basically a benefactor that is going to hold on to it, and that's actually the most powerful one was the reality gem in the comics. So they go about for however many issues, and the second incarnation of Adam Warlock is actually very 1990s, full of angst and anxiety, and he's kind of whiny too. He really is. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that, and finally, we get to the second Infinity War going on. It was actually called Infinity War. And you have the Magus came back. Well, how did the Magus came back? He was dead. He died 20 years earlier. Turns out that when Adam Warlock took on the mantle of the Infinity Gauntlet to better serve him, he decided that he needed to expel both good and evil from him. In doing that, he gave form, because he had the power in his hands, he gave form to the Magus, who came back and ended up fighting. He created the doppelgangers of all the heroes, including one that I'm sure you saw in the 90s at some point, the Spider-Man doppelganger with like 8 arms, with the jagged
fantastic doppelganger.
Yeah,
fantastic doppelganger.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, and that's the only one that ever really stuck around. They used him for a lot. They used him in Maximum Carnage, if I'm not mistaken.
That bled into Maximum Carnage.
Yeah,
bled into Maximum Carnage video game. Yeah, bled into
wow.
So that series came out in 1992. So there were some things from that series that had some legs. Obviously, I enjoyed that series. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun. It got a little crazy towards the end. There's a lot of cosmic cubes going on. You have Kang the Conqueror. For those who don't know who that is, watch the Ant-Man movie. It's too much to go into that. You had Doctor Doom going into it. And of course, you had all the cosmic beings, which we really haven't talked too much about. But in Marvel, there are many, many cosmic beings that have power over the forces of life and death. Well, like death, we have infinity, eternity. We have the devil in Mephisto. We have Lord Chaos and Master Order, ordering chaos, and we have
the living tribunal.
I mean, the in-betweener. You know, so these are the people that you see throughout these comic books that Starlin, you know, he really did a fantastic job bringing all these characters to life. No one was bigger than Adam Warlock in these. I don't care that Spider-Man, you had the X-Men in here, you had characters being killed. That's one of those things that actually I skipped over, and I apologize. But during the Infinity Gauntlet, you know, Thanos did kill half the universe. He did what he said he was going to do. And he did it just because he wanted them dead. He didn't care about balance. But that also included superheroes that we knew, loved ones of superheroes. Mary Jane, you know, Peter Parker's wife, ended up being one of the people dead. A bunch of the X-Men, and then when the rest of the heroes went up against him, he killed them all brutally too. That was one of the first times that we ever saw these heroes being killed. Wolverine was turned into rubber. She-Hulk and Namor were turned into mold. Cyclops was asphyxiated. Iron Man had his head taken off. I mean, this was bad.
Was Cap the last one standing, Arco?
Cap was the last one standing, and just like in the MCU, Infinity War, he was punched in the head, and he was killed. You know, so you kind of thought, I wondered if he was going to kill him there, but he did kill him in the book. So that was insane. You know, and then of course, you know, Deus Ex Machina. They were end up bring them all back, obviously, and you know, then we go into Infinity War, which was great, and then it stepped off like a big hill with Infinity Crusade, okay, where you had the Magus being the bad part of him, which was brought to life. Now you had the good part of him, which was a deity, which I think was called the Goddess, if I'm not mistaken. And she was basically oh my God, if Starlin was saying everything, if Stalin did not tell you about his thoughts on religion in the 70s, he told you in this one, because this was a woman, a goddess who was basically trying to create another universal church of truth through her teachings. And, you know, you got to follow me or else, you know, you're going to burn, and all the stuff that came from that. I didn't like that series at all. I have to be honest with you. I never read the whole thing. So I can't tell you anything about that. So that, to me, that's when Adam Warlock's second incarnation ended, because the Infinity Watch ended a few years later, and I myself got away from comics for a while until he was brought back, I know, in the mid-2000s, but that wasn't my Adam Warlock.
Wow.
The Infinity Crusade #1 is one of those holofoil covers, by the way.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
And Arco, just to, I don't want to correct anything you said, because, but I think
please do.
I think you might have just said when Infinity Watch was formed, you said the High Evolutionary. It was the Living Tribunal, right, that told them to separate the gems.
Did I say that? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. I meant to say that Living Tribunal. I apologize. Yes.
Just because I know the Living Tribunal is another big Marvel comic.
Yes. So Living Tribunal is actually, I apologize, it's the guy with the 3 different faces. You know, the judge, jury, and executioner, basically, of the Marvel Universe. So,
yeah.
And we briefly saw in Doctor Strange, right? One of those dimensions, maybe?
Yes, Doctor Strange, and we saw Eternity for a hot minute in Thor: Love and Thunder. That he was actually a driving force in that particular film. Other than making money, because I did not like that film. So that's just me. That's just me. Joe, here's a little tidbit for you. Yeah, so back in 1992, when Infinity War was coming out, I was working at a stationery in Roslyn, and a woman came in. I don't know how I got into this conversation with her, but maybe I was reading a comic book when she came in. I have no idea. But she came in, and I found out that she was Al Milgram's wife. Now, Al Milgram during the 80s and 90s was both a penciler and an artist for Marvel, and he was actually doing the color I'm not sure if it's the inking, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. This is I have no idea what they do, but he was doing that, and I actually have one of those #1 issues signed by him. So that was I have that at home. So that was always a nice little memory.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, Al Milgram and Steve Englehart launched the West Coast Adventures, and Al.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, I was never a big fan. I'm not sure if he's going to listen to this, but I hated the way he drew people. They were too blocky, and it was almost. I mean, you go back and you look at how they were drawn. I'm like,
I know what you mean, but Al Milgram reminds me of Bob Layton over at DC, who had done many books, including Green Lantern. Neither artist had a good grasp of what we'd say anatomy, but I liked about both of them. They really laid out a page and told a story very well.
Yes.
The layouts are great, the storytelling is great, but you're right, the figure drawing left something to be desired.
Yeah, I agree. So if you got James, if you ever have a chance, or anybody listening, go take a look at Al Milgram's. You're going to be like, wow. But hey, listen, the guy got a job, so he's better than I'll ever be. I'm just saying, just wasn't my thing.
He worked for him for a long time, Al Milgram.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to be sacrilegious here, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the way Jack Kirby drew everybody.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to obviously Jack Kirby's not living, he's a legend. He was a legend.
Of course.
And all the character designs are based upon what he did. But in terms of loving artwork, I'm just not the biggest fan.
I agree. And would we have people like McFarlane or Adams if those guys were not around beforehand? No, we wouldn't have. I don't think so. But you know what? That doesn't mean that I can't say, well, I'd rather have McFarlane any day of the week. So
yeah, I mean, McFarlane was like Neil Adams, George Perez. I mean, those are the guys that I like. I mean, Capullo. I mean, those are the artists that I like. But I'm saying, but I understand, without those original style of art. And plus, those are the guys who are inventing the industry. I mean, who knows what a comic book was going to look like without those guys? So
right.
Yeah, Kirby's strengths were again layout and storytelling, and his figures didn't look like anything in the real world. And then you skip ahead 30 years into the late 60s, and here comes Neil Adams with his hyper realism, right? When I told this before, when I first saw Neil Adams Superman come, I almost retched. I almost threw up. Look, Superman looks like he's lost 50 pounds. He's too skinny. And then you see Neil Adams taking over Batman. It's like, holy shit, this is amazing. So it's again, art is in the eye of the beholder. But I love Kirby for different reasons than I love Neil Adams. And you talk about blocky artwork. Arco. There's one artist I love and I will always cherish, and that's Ross Andrew. Ross Andrew and his partner, inking partner out life, Mike Esposito. They're very blocky, but the storytelling is amazing. It's just, and this is the stuff. It's what makes comics great.
What?
I mean,
I guess it's like this. I guess it's really just dependent on who's doing the block. I mean, because Romita Jr. gets accused of doing blockiness too. I mean,
but let me tell you something. Romita Jr. compared to somebody like Milgram, and they were working at the same time. Let me tell you something. Milgram by the late 80s wasn't doing the penciling anymore, so he still was working, but he was doing either the inking or coloring, whatever you want to call it. But he was on the other side of it, which is fine because he did a great job and his use of colors were fantastic. But I love Romita Jr. and so that's. I'll never say a bad word about Romita Jr.
No, his run on Daredevil with Mephisto and Ann Nocenti writing, that's one of my favorite Daredevil runs ever.
I mean, his run on Spider-Man with JMS is
of course. Or me myself, he took over the X-Men from from issue 200 to let's say 220 and everything that he did. He did a great run there, which was amazing. So I love Romita Jr.
I always loved the way he drew Rogue. I loved his Rogue.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
So
So Arco, just to I guess we will circle back
sure.
on landing the plane on Adam Warlock,
Right.
which I thank you both, because this is like an education to me, because I also didn't realize. I mean, so Jim Starlin created all those cosmic characters.
Okay, so no, I wouldn't say he created a lot. He did create a lot. I couldn't tell you if the in-betweener was his or somebody else's. A lot of these characters were thrown out there by Kirby and Stan Lee, and they didn't use them for any other purposes other than maybe one or two issues, like
Right.
in Warlock's case. So if they still out there, they just went out to space. He's not dead. Not that it would matter. That other artists were able to pick him up and give them backstories, and that's what I love about the artists of the '70s. Give me a chance. Let me work on somebody that that nobody's heard of before. And Starlin ended up doing that. Now there were a lot of cosmic beings out there besides Galactus. I'm just not sure that he's the one who created them, but he gave them all depth that they didn't have, and made some of them terrifying, because the in-betweener in that story was really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow. So if you had to, we obviously, any other character, we'd have to do a whole other podcast, like I said. But who is your favorite cosmic Marvel character?
Let me. You know what? I love Galactus. And I love Galactus because, James, I gave you that Fantastic Four trade paperback, and it basically shows Galactus as a little bit of a sympathetic character. In the beginning, he was brought to the pages by Kirby and Lee because they needed the Fantastic Four to fight God, and this was a being who came down to literally eat the Earth, and that was his whole storyline. They didn't give him a basis until the '80s of why he was doing what he was doing. Galactus wanted to die. The first thing that Galactus said in one of those issues in that trade paperback is, "I'm dying." And then Death comes to him and goes, "No, you can't die. I need you. You're part of the balance and the force that keeps things together." So she forbade him to die. But I love Galactus because he is not what he seems. And from his story from the beginning, the fact that he is the last remaining thing from the previous universe that went into the Big Bang is amazing to me, so that's amazing. So to me, Galactus is always going to be my favorite cosmic character. That I don't care how they do it or who does it. They'll never do it well enough, in my opinion, that I will say, "Oh, well, this is as good." Thanos was as good because they did it a certain way. I just don't think Galactus is ever going to translate to the movies like I want him to.
Yeah. He's my favorite too, James. Galactus is my favorite. And, FF 48, 49, and 50, which introduces Galactus and the Silver Surfer. And at the very end, it sends Johnny Storm off to college. I mean, they did so much in 3 issues.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Is it fair to say, Arco, there were stories before, like, for instance, Fantastic Four 37, Behold the Distant Star, when the FF go to the Skrull homeworld to, because the issue before, previous issues, they killed Sue and Johnny's father, so Sue was lamenting that, and they'd say, "Oh, well, let's go." And of course, Reed has a jump ship, a trans warp ship, and that's a great story. It might be the first time the FF travel intergalactically, but is it fair to say that FF 48, 49, and 50 is the kind of the dawning of the cosmic age of Marvel Comics with the introduction of Galactus?
100%. 100%, because you had beings now. The Skrulls obviously had been there from the beginning, issue number 2 or 3, whatever it was. Two, I believe. I think it was 2 because the 3 was Namor. But anyway, so they. Yes, the cosmic beings came to Earth in issue 48, and since then they've only expounded upon them. But you're naming some issues, Joe, from Fantastic Four. But let's think about this for a second. In a span of, what did I say, 66? So in a span of 20 issues, from issue 46 with the Inhumans to issue 66 with Adam Warlock. Look what they literally created everything that you and I have basically seen on the MCU screens for the last however many years. They created generations worth in 20 issues.
Yeah.
Inhumans, Galactus, Silver Surfer, Black Panther,
The
Doctor
Negative Zone.
Negative Zone, Doctor Doom, and Claw, were all part of the Black Panther storyline, and then him, which became Adam Warlock by issue 66. So talk about having a rich vein of form that these guys tapped into. I don't know what drugs they were doing, but they really came up with.
I think they were drinking, Arco. They're from a different generation. I think they were booted up big time up on those offices. Yeah.
James,
right.
We know that James is a very creative person. James, you have a great mind for creation, your art, and I writing and storytelling. I have to say that you know how difficult it can be. So how is it that the story? And I know we're going off the Adam Warlock train here, but just let's think about this for a second. All that came out from these guys' minds and their hearts that they gave to us on the pages. Just look at it in those 20 issues, what they gave us, and then extrapolate that from 1961 to 1970 when Kirby left. It's just amazing what they were able to create. Amazing.
Oh, yeah. As an artistic person, I'd be happy just to have one of those.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it's to me, I think that is just goes to show what it goes to show. The stuff that we've been seeing on the screen of the MCU, it's meant so much to so many people. Yes, they've made billions of dollars off of it, but they went to these stories for a reason. And they're going now bringing like the second tier. I'm not going to say second tier. Let's say the second generation of stories now when you have people like Adam Warlock coming into it. They're not going to show us the Adam Warlock from the 70s. They will show us the Adam Warlock, though, from the 2006 run that he came back from his third death. The guy's always dying.
I was going to ask you that as we kind of bring this in for a landing a little bit. I feel like Feige, as we just said, is they're pulling from the original source material, not just like the most famous storylines, but their original appearances, it seems like. So I feel like the Adam Warlock, we might not get the 70s Warlock, but we probably get something between the 70s and Infinity era Warlock, is my thinking.
So we've already seen part of the beginning of Warlock, or how he looked when he first came out of the cocoon, when you saw the cocoon at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Where the lady from the what was the golden lady? Yeah. So she's creating something. That's what they do. They create themselves, and she's creating the most perfect being, and they're going to call him Adam. Now, is that what Gunn is going to end up going with? I mean, because he created that on the screen, he put it like that, but I'm not sure that that's what he ends up going with. As far as the rest, well, we have Pip the Troll and we have Gamora, but we're not going to have the Infinity Watch, and that thing on his head ain't the Soul Stone, so I'm not exactly sure. Listen, I know that that's what Adam Warlock used in the comics. We know that the Soul Stone has been destroyed. There could be something along the lines of the madness of the multiverse happening. I'm not sure. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean,
Jim could drop in from another universe.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as we saw in Loki, they have gems lying around everywhere, so that they're like.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little, like I said, I love the MCU, obviously. I think they did a great job, especially the Infinity Saga. I am like a little bit of a purist and was a little sad we didn't see Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, and Thanos in the same place like we did that.
My head would have exploded.
But like I said, when you enter this whole idea of the multiverse that MCU is doing, that sort of puts me on the table like, well, anything is still possible. It sort of just puts in my mind also like you will probably see Captain America and Iron Man again, and you can see the versions of the comic book characters you want in some form if they ever wanted to do it. So I think everything is on the table until it's not on the table anymore. Until they decide to close the multiverse somehow, I think anything is possible at this point.
Okay, do I want? I mean, I love Captain America. I love Iron Man. Do I want to see Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man again? I mean, I'd love to, but these guys are getting older. Yeah, there's only so much that you can makeup is going to do. I mean, the guy, if you look at him now, he looks like 20 pounds less than he did when he died. So, I mean, on the screen.
Well, I guess what I should say is, like, I don't necessarily need to see. I'm saying we could see versions of those characters played.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah, totally possible. But I don't think that's the way they want to go with the multiverse stuff. They brought in Fantastic. They brought in Mr. Fantastic for the first time. So, I would love to see him, take on that role going forward. But I don't know that they're going to keep on changing people, because people they will not accept it, I think, like comic book people accept it in the comics. So
no, that's true. Yeah, I mean, listen, they could do so much. I'm just I'm looking forward to when we get to see. I'm hoping, based on the timeline, that we at least get to see Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer on screen together at some point.
Right, exactly.
That would be cool.
Which would be nice, and maybe with Reed Richards, and maybe we can have an FF storyline with those characters together. Would be something that I would like to see. But that's not to say I don't enjoy what they've done so far. It's just like you'd like to see some of these comic panel pages come to life too.
Absolutely. Do we still have Kevin Feige's phone number, or does he just listen to us? Let's get on that, Kevin.
Well, Arco, this has been fantastic. Your wealth of knowledge on this subject is I just can't believe how much information.
Well, trust me, there's so much more. Honestly, we could do this for another hour and a half, 2 hours. It's just that, you know what, the character is fantastic. He has a lot of lore to him. He's very that was the word that I wanted to say. He's very thematic. He's got the themes of religion and power and sacrifice and the Messiah, all these things that back in the 1970s were unheard of. You couldn't say those things. Middle America Bible Belt would have burned the shops down if they knew what the hell they were reading. So honestly, guys, I glossed over. What I did was giving you the bare minimum just to make him a little bit more attractive to some people who really don't know who he is. But folks, if you're waiting on seeing him on the big screen, that's great. That's all. That'll be your Adam Warlock. You're perfectly good with that. But if you really want to see where he comes from and what really great storytelling was back in the 70s, please go look up some of the Jim Starlin Warlock issues. I believe there were 15 of them, 1 through 15. The Magus Saga is included in that. Or get yourself the trade paperback, which of course I don't have in front of me, so I can't tell you what it's called. But for $39, you'll get everything about the Adam Warlock that you would need to be very happy.
Yeah, I was going to say for our if you want to use our non-sponsor Hoopla has the entire has the Jim Starlin Warlock saga is there. It has it has Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity Watch, Infinity Crusade, and Infinity War. And is he as Adam Warlock in the Thanos versus Avenger trade as well? Is those stories in there too?
Oh, good question. Thanos versus the Avengers. I'm sorry. Is that from when is
that
Warlock
from? Well, there's a trade paperback that has all the Infinity War stuff with Thanos versus the Avengers. So Adam Warlock's probably in there too, right? Or is he?
Well, it's possible. Wait, no, that is the one that I have. I'm sorry, I do have that. Yes, Adam Warlock is in that. In fact, that's the one that I'm talking about. In fact, that has the storyline of the Magus in there, so it will have everything you need in there.
Yeah, you can pretty much, audience, if you're very interested, our recommendations for this episode is just go to Hoopla. You could buy it as well. But the entire saga the entire saga that Arco likes is on Hoopla for you to read. I don't think they have the 2000 Adam Warlock saga. I mean, they have Annihilation in there, but I read Annihilation. I don't remember Adam Warlock being in Annihilation, but...
I believe he was towards the end, but you know what? They lost me Annihilation was okay as a storyline. It was a cosmic storyline, but when you started messing around with people like Drax, like he came back and he wasn't as green as he was. He was kind of gray, and he was half the size, and he was speaking in complete sentences. I'm like, well, listen, I like my Drax is dumb, big and dumb. So they lost me on that a little bit. Gamora was not the same, and then they introduced this weird guy, which I've never even heard of. Like, who's this Peter Quill guy? Came out of nowhere, So. Yeah. So to me, anyway, maybe he had been around. Well, actually, Star-Lord had been around for 20 years, but they brought him back like he was somebody, and I guess I was wrong.
Funny.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I guess those would be our recommendations for this episode.
Right.
So, well, thank you once again, Arco, for joining us and giving us our first dive into the Marvel Cosmic Universe. I think we'll have to have future episodes where we get to dive into those other characters.
That'd be great.
That we just had a chance to touch upon. So thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you, guys. I love being here with you. I love talking about it and sharing my knowledge with other people.
No, it's great. It's a great history lesson especially for like, I didn't read all the stuff you guys read. So, and Joe, thank you for all your knowledge and contributions and expanding on the cosmic universe too. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome, James. And thanks again, Arco. We couldn't have done this without you.
Not a problem, Joe. Thank you for having me, guys.
And listening audience, thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this dive into Marvel Cosmic with a focus on Adam Warlock, please, we'd like to hear your thoughts on when this episode was released in the Facebook group or on our Instagram. And if you have questions for us, you can email us at secretoriginsmc@gmail.com. I thank you for listening. We all thank you for listening, and we will talk to you on the next episode.